What is really good, draft sickos? We are mere hours away from the 2025 NBA draft, and I wanted to squeeze in one more Q&A, so I asked for some questions over on Twitter. You hit me with them, and we're going to spice it up, though. We're going to do it with a twist. Today, instead of just doing a basic Q&A, this is the first episode of the Deep Dish, and we are going to make some pizzas while I answer your 2025 NBA draft questions. So I'm excited. You guys left some good questions. Let's cook. All right. Our first question is from my guy, Bryce Simon, at Motor City Hoops. You can find him on the Game Theory podcast with our friend Sam Vecini. He said, he's asking, first wow moment, selection, trade, etc. of Wednesday night. I'm going to keep it a little bit simple here just because of the dialogue that's been going on in the draft space recently. And I'm going to say that the first wow moment is going to be Philly taking Ace Bailey at 3. That's right. I said it. The Philadelphia 76ers are going to take Ace Bailey. Ace Bailey came in the year at potentially the number 2 pick. And you know, he had an up and down year. He had some big moments, 37 points. You know, when Dylan Harper went out, showed what he could do. A two-way guy, rebounds the ball potentially, but he struggled with field stuff. Rutgers was not a good basketball team, right? So there were some real questions for Ace on how much does he impact winning? Can he be the number 1 guy? Doesn't so much look like the Tracy McGrady prospect that we potentially build him as, right? And that's scary if you are investing in the number 3 pick. But I think that he is so talented, and we've seen guys like LaMelo, Shaedon Sharpe still get picked high. Shaedon's, you know, his situation was even scarier, I think, given the fact that he didn't play at all. We didn't see him. He came from Canada. NBA GMs couldn't really even see him necessarily. So he still went 7th because as a NBA front office exec once said, you can get those role players in any draft. You can't get talented guys who have some star upside in every draft. And you know, I think it's going to take a while. Ace is very much a project, but he has the potential to change a franchise if he pays off, because he could be, you know, a top scorer in the league at 6'9" in shoes with a 7-foot wingspan. So I would say that is going to be the first wow moment, which doesn't seem like a wow moment if you've been following the draft, you know, all draft season necessarily, because that's how he came in. But considering how the intel and how a lot of other guys are kind of overtaking him for that 3 spot, especially if Philly stays there, I don't know. I know they would like VJ. I love VJ too, Long Island kid. It's just a tough backcourt for me with McCain and Maxey. And, you know, Ace, I think, is equally as talented. Good kid from everything I've seen behind the scenes and heard, just a little misguided right now. So I think that's going to be the first wow moment, because everyone's saying he's going to fall to 6 or 7. I think the wow is that Daryl Morey is going to take him at number 3. So what we're doing with the pizza, we're going to give this thing a par bake. So I'm going to put a little bit of cheese, and I'm going to get this going just so we can get this extra crispy, get that undercarriage nice and crispy. So I'm going to cook it for about a minute, put it in the oven, and then put the rest of the ingredients on. Our next question is from Bill in Production at YT_BLLEN. I want to ask everyone about Carter Bryant and Drake Powell. Is the gap between them really that huge? I want to know what the big difference is. For example, what makes Bryant stand out and why Powell has relatively less height. All right, for me, the big difference between, and we're going to put this down to 650. It was cooking at 850 just to preheat. Now we're getting it down to 650. We're going to put this thing in for about a minute. Again, just to get that undercarriage cooking set the timer. The big difference for me with Drake Powell and Carter Bryant is, one, I like Carter Bryant's frame a little bit better. You know, he is thicker, he weighs more. And then for Drake Powell, I think he's an awesome defender as a wing. I just think his offense is so much further away. I know Carter Bryant is not the most advanced guy. They do have a lot of similarities. I see why people are starting to ask this question about what the big difference is. But honestly, I just think that Carter Bryant has proven that he can be a impactful role player more than Drake Powell. I mean, you know, I've kind of been a little iffy on Drake Powell and his offense, even coming into the year when he was, you know, potentially going to be a top 10 guy, because I saw him at the Jordan Brand Classic. Like, to be frank, I felt like he couldn't really dribble. And then, you know, I watched a lot of his high school film, and, you know, while the EYBL stuff might have been a little bit better, I still wasn't really super into some of his other film. You know, at his school, his state championship game, I felt like he was invisible. And that's the big thing. Like, offensively, I just think he's invisible a lot of the time, where I at least think that Carter Bryant makes you feel his presence a little bit. And I just don't like the guys who I have to question how much effort they're giving on a night-to-night basis, to be honest. And I felt like Drake Powell, you forget he's out there on the floor. I never really got that impression with Carter Bryant. I understand that, you know, the shooting percentages and all that are not all that dissimilar, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I like Carter Bryant's versatility defensively a little more, because I think he's going to be able to guard up. And then I just think that his shot looks better. I think that he's stronger. He's going to be a better finisher at the rim. I just think he's going to be a more impactful guy all around, even if they both share similar roles. I think Drake Powell's a guy who, I think he's going to get lost in the G League eventually. You know, maybe like a Keon Johnson. Maybe he has a late season, you know, a resurgence a couple of years in, bouncing around. I just think it's going to be hard for him to find a real role. To me, the reason that the Bulls rumors felt so real is because it felt a lot like Patrick Williams, who shared a lot of similar gifts, but never actually played up to that potential. All right, so this is cooked pretty well at the bottom. Let's go get the sauce, the pepperoni on this bad boy. All right, we have a nice base, a nice undercarriage on our pie. Let's get a little bit of sauce on this guy. Oh, yeah. We got to get that distributed evenly. Throw a little bit more on here. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's going to be nice. All right, again, we've had this thing cooking at about 650. Let's throw our mozzarella on here. We got shredded mozzarella from Uncle Giuseppe's, which is an Italian market on Long Island. You make your way there on a Sunday, and you're going to find an old school Italian guy singing a little Sinatra, a little Rat Pack, but fresh ingredients, just... You know, one of my favorite things about living on Long Island is my proximity to this Italian market, which just absolutely rules. All right, we have our mozzarella. Now we got to get our pepperoni. Now let's put our pepperoni on, and while we do that, let's answer another question. This one is from @_gettingbuckets. What's the significant difference between Wolf and Renault as prospects, considering their draft stock seems to have a huge gap? Well, I think that they're both really interesting. Depending on who you ask, I think their stock is similar. You know, Raph Barlow, super high on him. Kevin O'Connor, super high on Renault. These guys, you know, think that he's a potential lottery type prospect, which is, you know, maybe the early part of the range that we're starting to see for Danny Wolf. You know, it wouldn't shock me if Danny Wolf goes at like pick 10, 11. It wouldn't shock me if he falls to the 20s. But for me, I'm a little bit higher on Danny Wolf, because I just think that the way that he has been able to handle the ball and pass and run point guard as a 7-footer and, you know, in shoes somewhere around there was super, super impressive. I mean, this is stuff that you don't see all the time. Not to say that Renault's offense wasn't impressive either. His movement patterns at his height, legit. I love that he played at the combine and showed out in that first game. I buy the shooting long term. But he still has some questions about his feel that I don't think that Danny necessarily has. So I'm more of a Danny Wolf guy, but I think that Renault is definitely somebody who could have a better career. He's big and his movement patterns are crazy. And if either of those guys end up in a weird situation, I could see it not working out. Conversely, either of those guys end up in an awesome situation, I could see it working out pretty well for whoever drafts them because they're two big dudes with really unique skills. But Danny Wolf, I'm a buyer of the shot. The free throws weren't great, but I think, he shot it pretty confidently from three. He had some of the step backs he had was pretty crazy. So I like Danny Wolf a lot. And I think that, a team's going to get a really unique piece in either one of them, but I'm a Danny Wolf guy. But again, Renault can really, really hoop. All right, so now we're going to get this thing back into the oven. Get this thing cooking probably for another 4 minutes or so. Get the timer going. We're going to turn it every 30 seconds or so just to make sure that it's cooking evenly. And then we're going to finish it off and have a delicious, delicious pepperoni pizza. All right, so next question. Thoughts on Chaz Lanier and other mid-30s expected second-round players? Who would you really want the Spurs to get at 38? I think just in general in that range, whether it's the Spurs, whether it's somebody else, if you're looking at the Lanier kind of archetype, I'm personally more of a fan of Kobe Bryant. I like Chaz Lanier. I heard he's been crushing workouts. It would not shock me if he ended up going a little earlier than this even, because that dude could shoot and he could score. But I like Kobe Bryant a little bit more, similar, a little bigger, and I think a little stockier. And Kobe Bryant's shooting profile over the course of his career, he shot 47% over the last 2 years from three. That is outrageous. I like his wiggle. I think it's underrated. I think he's a really nuanced passer if you really dive into some of the film. Oh, yeah. I'm going to let that cook for another 30 seconds or so just to get those pepperonis a little more crisp. But I like Kobe Bryant's game. Maybe I'm biased. I got a chance to watch him work out. I got a chance to spend some time with him, talk to him. We broke down film together. I like his game. I like his attitude. And I just think that at 6'7" in shoes, dudes like that who shoot as well as he does play in the league for a really, really, really long time. But either Lanier or Kobe Bryant, in San Antonio, of course, are going to be a good fit. And if everybody fits in San Antonio, everybody fits because Victor Wembanyama is a cheat code. But especially with De'Aaron Fox, potentially with Dylan Harper and Stephen Castle, you're definitely going to need some shooters. So I see where your head's at. Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. Oh, look at this. That's a Pete's. Great undercarriage. Great pizza there. This is an incredible looking pie. Cut this thing. The crunch on this thing is going to be incredible. I'm going to cut this into little fours. This little personal pizza just looks absolutely phenomenal. Looks delicious. Oh, my goodness. That's phenomenal. I had to take a quick bite just because I couldn't help myself. But I am going to drizzle a little Mike's Hot Honey onto this bad boy. I did have to take a bite. It just looked so good. But I am going to drizzle a little Mike's Hot Honey on it. Just give it a little extra something, oh boy. Yeah. This is going to be Just such an experience, such a treat. I'm glad we're doing this, guys. I'm having a great time here. By the way, I'm rocking the Uni Volt 12 indoor, outdoor grill. I mean, we're cooking pizzas here inside. I mean, you can hear the crisp. You can hear the crunch. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right, let's stretch this dough out a little bit. It's time to get to our vodka pie. All right. I'm excited for this one. Let's get shape the crust a little bit. All right, let's shape this crust a little bit, and we're gonna hit this with a par bake as well. I'm gonna throw a little bit of shredded mozzarella on this guy on the bottom, just as we did with the first one. I'm a big cheese guy. Big cheese guy over here. So just a little bit. But what we're going to do differently on this one is we're going to cook this with a little bit of sauce. So I got my vodka sauce, again, from Uncle Giuseppe's. So we're going to get the sauce on this guy. Nice. We got nice chunks. Mix that all up. Spread it nice and even. We got to get the sauce all the way out to the crust. Oop. Oh, this is going to be good. And you're going to see, we're going to do this one a little different, but again, we want to get this base going nice and even. Get a nice cook for it. Not too long. And then we're going to hit it with the fresh mozzarella. All right, before we throw this bad boy in the oven, let's look to our next question from @Kostler_Nick. Who are likely candidates that have a high chance of sliding pretty far? What's a bigger red flag? Queen's combine performance or Coward's lack of games against strong competition? Great question both ways, because I think both guys actually have a pretty wide range. All right, we got that bad boy in the oven. We're going to let that cook for a few minutes, par bake it before we throw the fresh mozzarella on. I'm going to spin it every, 30, 40 seconds just to get it cooking evenly, get that nice undercarriage. But that's a good question about Cedric Coward versus Derek Queen. Look, Derek Queen admittedly is number 3 on my board, but I have Cedric Coward as a top 10 guy too. Got a chance to meet Cedric Coward in LA, spoke to him, shook his hand. He engulfed my hand. His hands are huge. He's got mitts. The small sample size thing against high-level competition is, a real worry. And that's why you saw maybe in the ESPN mocks, he was sliding a little bit further than a lot of the other mainstream mocks. But I think teams are a little confused overall about his draft range. But 6'6" in shoes with a 7'2" wingspan. Wings like that do not grow on trees. He shoots the cover off the ball. He's athletic. He's fluid. He's got that, classic underdog story that I think a lot of times helps guys scale down and roll and then eventually grow as their game continues to mature. Obviously, he's a little older. Derek Queen, I think that his combine was fairly expected, arguably a little expected. Not the most vertical pop from Derek Queen. Obviously a guy who has to continue to shape and work on his body. That's something that, has been the story for years for him. But to me, he is power forward J-Dub. I love how he attacks the rim. I love his handle. I love his creation ability. I personally think, I know some guys on the No Ceilings team and just in general are a little lower on his defense, and I get some of the questions, the effort sometimes wax and wanes, and I think if you're looking at him purely as a center, I think that I'm with you. But I think that he's going to be more of a 4-5 than just strictly a 5. Like, I just think that he's got boogie. He's way better as a guy who is moving his feet laterally than a guy who's going to go protect the rim. So, he's been playing with Asa Newell. He's been playing with Julian Reese. He's been playing with more traditional guys who play near the rim, and he's still been able to thrive. He wins at every level. He's so skilled, and I'm a believer in the shot. I don't know what his range is, though. I don't. If you told me that he goes 6 to Washington, I would believe it. If you told me he went 12 to Chicago, I believe it. If you told me that he slipped to, the 20s to where Brooklyn is picking, I would believe it. So I can definitely see both of those guys sliding, unfortunately, because I think that they're both guys who should be taken in the lottery. All right, that is a good undercarriage to start with. We got a nice crisp. Let's go get our mozzarella on there. All right, so as you can see, this thing is piping hot, and I did burn the roof of my mouth on that pepperoni pizza. That's the sacrifice. That's diving on the floor in the pizza game. You got to be willing, to get a few bruises on you, if you're going to thrive in this business. So I'm willing to do that for the love of the game. For you folks, the fine viewers at home, make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Let's get to some more questions. Tell me about Sorber's potential fit on the Spurs and what Spurs fans could potentially expect. Before we get to that, what we're going to do here is we're going to hit this thing with some fresh mozzarella, not the shredded for this one. We're hitting this thing with some fresh mozzarella. Okay. Again, this was made fresh at Uncle Giuseppe's Italian Market. It's delicious. It's beautiful. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this, guys. For this drunken vodka pie, which I'm a big fan of the drunken pies. And this one is going to be absolutely delicious with the fresh mutts. The vodka sauce. I mean, just so much to choose from. We got to shape it. Fill those gaps. We don't want empty space. We want, a nice even distribution here. Pop a piece of fresh mozzarella while we're making it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the vodka sauce. And we're just going to do some dollops of vodka. So just some dollops, a little bit more. Do one more. All right, now, Thomas Sorber. All right, so Sorber is a guy that I have admittedly struggled with a little bit throughout this process. I'm probably one of the lower guys on Sorber on the No Ceilings team. And I like his game. I really do. And maybe it is growing up as a Bulls fan, I just became a little jaded by the feeling that he is just kind of when he's a variant of Wendell Carter Jr., who I think is a good NBA player, but maybe not a great starting center. Maybe more suited for a bench role. I feel like Sorber is in that mold. I mean, he measured incredible with the 7'6" wingspan. And again, if we're talking Spurs specific, he fits great with Wemby because he operates near the rim. He's a bruiser, potentially an enforcer. He's got a little jump shot, much more comfortable at the elbows and the three-point line right now. I like his little jab step into the jumper at the elbows, but he feels more comfortable around the hoop. But he's not like a super good lob threat. I think his shot blocking, his rim protection is just a tad overrated. To be clear, I think that he's a good rim protector, but I don't necessarily think he is a great one. If you look at a lot of his rim contests, he's just kind of parked in the paint, which is not something you can do in the NBA. You can do that in college. You can just sit in the paint and wait for the guys to drive to the rim. But he is really good at getting vertical. He's good at using his length and his strength. And he's super young. I mean, you look at him in the face, he's got braces, like he's super young. So the most interesting part of his game to me is probably his passing. I think his passing is really good, really slick. So I like that about him. In that way, maybe you think he could play a little bit more of a modern game. Because he is going to have to modernize that game from being a post player, but he's not the guy I would target at 14 for the Spurs. I would like to see maybe Queen if he slips there. I would like to see maybe Johan Berenger, I think would be really interesting with Wemby because he's another guy who operates a little closer to the basket, but I like his defensive potential a little bit more, and he's like a lob threat, rim roller, only been playing ball for 3 years, so if they were going to go big, I feel like he'd be a really fun option. A lot of people thought the Hawks were going to go for a big man, Malawach, maybe even Berenger, but they just traded for Porzingis, so I guess there's still opportunity, so we'll see how that all shakes out. This thing is going to be good. Cook that thing a little bit more. We're smoking here. We're firing off draft questions. What's better than this? The deep dish, trademark.